Thank you, Sanjay. Nice shirt, by the way. Yes, these are standard issue for Puppet keynotes, apparently. It's great to be back here with all of you in San Francisco. As Sanjay mentioned, last year we talked about the journey that all of us are taking towards pervasive automation and our mission of being your partner on that journey. In order to make that real, we defined a pretty ambitious product roadmap. And in order to deliver on that roadmap, we've had to undergo the same transformation that all of us are going through. We've had to ship more software on a faster schedule in order to support the goals for our business. We've gone from a single product company to now having a portfolio of 3 product lines. That's required us to fundamentally rethink how we do R&D. We've also needed to re-examine how we build each and every one of these products. We've gone from delivering Puppet Enterprise every 6 months with the last vestiges of what I would call a water scrum file model where we do some hardening at the end, to now delivering the results of every bi-weekly sprint to the team that we call Customer Zero, our SRE team that operates the production Puppet clusters. Shift left, smaller batches of work, ship the results of every sprint. Sound familiar? We've also taken aggressive bets on cloud and container technology to really speed up our own development. More on that later. In short, we've had to double down on DevOps in order to deliver on that aggressive roadmap. And so, as we talk you through all the new product releases, we'll also show you how we've turned our technology inward, how we dog food our own software to reap the rewards of DevOps. So we're blessed with having a community of over 40,000 organizations, and that represents a ton of wisdom and experience. And when we talk to many organizations in our community, 4 common themes come up when we talk about the challenges that people face on their journey to pervasive automation. The first is people want to accelerate their time to value. How can I shrink down the time it takes me to be successful with automation? The second is, how do I scale my success from individuals to teams to entire organizations, and also from a few clusters of nodes all the way to my entire IT estate, both on premises and in the cloud? The third is, as I transform to a cloud-native architecture, how do I bring both dev and ops along? And how do I leverage my investments in automation across both the node-centric and cloud-native parts of my environments? And fourth, how do I measure the results of that transformation? Am I making progress on velocity, on quality? What is my ROI that I'm getting out of these transformation efforts? So 4 common themes, and surprise, surprise, that's exactly where we've chosen to focus our product investments in. So let's start with the first 2, which I call starting simple and succeeding at scale. Last year, we introduced Puppet Bolt, our open source remote task execution framework. Bolt starts simple and really scales with you. If you're new to automation, it's the fastest way to get quick wins. And if you're already a Puppet expert, it's a great way to get other teammates involved without having to teach them everything about Puppet before they can get anything done. Now with Bolt, you start by executing scripts on remote hosts, and then you can operationalize those scripts by wrapping them into tasks, annotating those tasks with metadata, and then sharing them on the Forge. And then when you're ready, you can take these tasks, assemble them into control flows we call task plans. And then when you're ready to execute all of those across more of your infrastructure, more of your teams, that's when Puppet Enterprise comes in. PE now has support for executing tasks as well as desired state configuration, and adds all the enterprise capabilities like RBAC and scale and security and compliance. And then, as you grow your Puppet code base, you want to treat that code base the same way that you treat your application code base. You want to be able to store and version it in source control, and you want to be able to automatically build and test and deploy it. And that's where continuous delivery for Puppet Enterprise comes in. CD for PE, as we call it, allows you to automate the build, test, deploy cycle for your Puppet code. So as you can see, you can start simple with Bolt, and then as you scale your automation across both teams and your infrastructure, PE and CD for PE are right there with you, helping you scale. Now let's shift gears and talk about what's new. Last year, almost to the day, I was here in San Francisco helping launch what we called back then Bolt 0.1, and now a year and 45 releases later, I am delighted to announce Bolt 1.0. 45 releases is a lot of releases, and rather than tell you everything that's new about Bolt, because I'd be here all day if I did that, I'll talk about my favorite two features. The first is the apply keyword that we added to task plans. That allows you to embed desired state configuration blocks inside of your task plans. So now you get the best of both worlds. You can combine control flow of tasks with desired state in a single artifact. And that means that you can also leverage the 6,000 modules of content that we have on the Forge in your task plans. So we think that's actually a game-changing facility there. And the second feature is the inventory file. As you grow Bolt's usage across more and more nodes, you want to organize those nodes into node groups, and then assign credentials and set sudo access and so on. And that's exactly what the inventory file allows you to do. Scale your Bolt usage to more and more nodes. Next up, I am really excited to announce Puppet 6, the latest version of our open source platform. Puppet 6! We've done some really good work in secrets management. Now the agent can request secrets directly from a secret store like Conjure or Vault, instead of having that happen on the master at catalog compilation time. This is actually one of the longest standing community requests in Puppet, and we're really glad to get that in the product. We've also containerized the entire Puppet server stack and offer that as a set of Docker containers, as well as a Docker Compose file to help you get that up and running very quickly. And we've recently even merged a community PR to be able to take that work and make it work on Kubernetes. So, containerized Puppet server stack. And then finally, we've done a lot to simplify certificate management. So now you can integrate Puppet with your favorite enterprise certificate authority, like Active Directory. Puppet 6. And then I am really jazzed to announce the latest version of our flagship product, Puppet Enterprise 2019. P2019! Thank you. It is built on Puppet 6 and also adds the capability to execute tasks on nodes that don't have an agent on them. Think about that for a second. That's exactly what I meant by starting simple. Now you don't have to operationalize an entire agent infrastructure before you get value out of your PE investment. You get all the RBAC and compliance and reporting from PE, whether you have agents or not. But of course, we're actually very big believers in agent infrastructures, so we've made it super easy to go install agents from within the tool over SSH or WinRM. So now you have a workflow right within the tool to be able to install those agents on unmanaged nodes. And finally, we've been able to add support for scheduling the execution of tasks on a particular day and time so that you can match your task runs to your change windows. We're so excited about PE 2019 and Puppet 6 that we have a whole talk on it at 11:15. Eric Sorensen, is going to give a talk called Postmodern Puppet, if I could pronounce it. It will melt your brain, even though I can't pronounce it, apparently. So enough talking, more showing. I'd like to bring up Mike Stonke, the Senior Director of Engineering for Puppet and Puppet Enterprise, to come show you a demo of Bolt. Come on up, Mike.
All right.
Right, Mike?
I'm going to show exactly what I planned.
Excellent.
All right. So as Omri said, we're going to start with Bolt. And the point of Bolt for us is to be the entry point for simple automation. We want you to start that way. Everybody in the world is not a Puppet expert, unfortunately. We're still working on it. But with Bolt, you can start simple, you can scale, you can onboard new team members, a new team, new departments. So let's just take a look here. I'm in a Puppet control repo, which is basically the repository that has your metadata, your Hira files, secrets, all sorts of good stuff. It controls the puppets. That's basically what's going on here. Let's take a look at the bolt there. Two things that we should point out are we have a Puppet file that's calling in all of the modules because Bolt's working with some existing Puppet modules. And we have this inventory file that Omri alluded to earlier. It's just a YAML file, but basically it provides logical groupings of your nodes that you can address. And so we have some Windows hosts, we have some web hosts, we have some Linux boxes. We can say what transport they use. We'll start with that. Now, what I want to do is take some unmanaged nodes. Perhaps they came in through an acquisition. Perhaps they were shadow IT, and now you know about it. You're shining a flashlight on it. But you want to start managing something that wasn't managed before. I'm going to add some firewall rules because they're web servers, so I'd like to open HTTPS. So I run a quick command. I look over here in the comments section. I don't see anything that says HTTPS because I haven't configured it yet. If you look up here, we have the plan file. Let's see if I zoom in. Does that help at all? Not really. OK. Got to try the tricks once, right? So we have the supply prep, which basically gets the nodes ready to receive the Bolt commands. And we're going to include this profile firewall. Well, let's take a look at profile firewall. That's just normal Puppet resources, right? I pulled that directly out of another module. So we have Puppet code that I'm going to go apply on some unmanaged nodes. They don't have a CA signed. They're not talking to a Puppet master. But we need to make good things happen. So going to run this plan for the profile firewall. And at the end, it now tells me that HTTPS is open and listening. I'm pretty happy with this. I have nodes that now do something that weren't doing something before. I've managed them without a Puppet infrastructure. I'm going to commit my change. I'm going to push my change. So now I have a profile that I applied to a few nodes that were unmanaged by Puppet. But let's say I want to pull that change set into things that are managed by Puppet. Our SRE team does most of this stuff through a Puppet master, and that's how we do things. So the problem is, how many of you have ever made a change and somebody says, well, is this going to impact the thing that's going on today? Maybe you have a deployment. And you say, well, it shouldn't. And you pause and you think, should. So that's a problem that we had for real in our SRE department all the time. Hey, Omri, have we solved that problem yet?
Mike, I thought you'd never ask. But first, Bolt task plans. Do you agree? It's going to change the world someday, right? Yeah. But Mike talked about the problem of committing your change with safety and security, and that's exactly where continuous delivery for Puppet Enterprise comes in. As Sanjay said, we launched version 1 of the product in June, and now we are delighted to announce version 2.0, CD4P 2.0. Of course, that automates the build, test, deploy cycle for Puppet code, but the most interesting and really, I would say, game-changing feature that we have in there is called impact analysis. We're now able to help you reason about the changes, the code changes, and what impact they will have, what nodes will be affected, and what classes will be applied on those nodes before you've actually merged that pull request and rolled that out onto your Puppet master. So, Mike, do you want to show us how you execute that change, open up a PR, and merge it with confidence?
I will.
All right, let's see it.
So we have the exact same profile we just applied via Volt here. That's our latest Git commit. I'm going to go ahead and create a pull request using hub on the command line because GUIs are not my favorite thing in the world. He says as he clicks on a GUI. All right, so we have a pull request. That fires off a webhook. In CD4PE, which is built on the pipelines framework, you can see we have new events. the webhook fires, we'll hit the new events button. What's happening right now is our control repo is getting a validation Linux job. We're doing a once over spec. We have high-res syntax validation. So we've set up a continuous delivery pipeline for the control repo of Puppet Enterprise. This also works with modules, but this demo is going to focus on the control repo as we just added that profile. Now, the thing we want to look at is impact analysis. It hits 4 nodes, which fortunately are the exact same 4 I expected. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. Now, were there resources that were touched that I wasn't aware of? There's one thing there. It's firewall. OK, feeling pretty good about that. So what do you think? Should we just merge the pull requests?
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's do it, Mike.
All right. So I'm going to show some checks here. We've integrated with GitHub to meet you where you're at. So you have a checkbox here with continuous integration of Puppet, impact analysis, CD for PE. I'm going to hit the green button because that's what managers do.
As long as its color is green.
All right, we have new events. Things are happening. Let's see, apparently system D, time sync D sucks. All right, so I merged the pull requests, and over here we had a gate. And so once we merge, now we're going to go into the deployment section of CD for PE. Let's take a look at this deployment. It tells us what SHA we're on. It's going to say we're deploying to all nodes simultaneously. There's a couple different modes you can deploy, but we've just chosen that one. And as soon as this green checkbox is there, all of our nodes are now running that latest code. So that's CD for PE. We've shipped with confidence. Instead of saying, that shouldn't affect anything that I don't know about, I can say, Omri, I'm sure it won't. CD for PE.
That makes me happy, Mike.
All right.
All right, thanks so much. CD for PE 2.0. Impact analysis. You saw it here first. In fact, I would say it's a really nice feature. I was here about 2 or 3 months ago with one of our larger open source deployments, and they talked about as they push past 100,000 nodes of scale, understanding, reasoning about the code changes that they make and what impact they have is kind of their largest scaling hurdle. So we really think that this will help both small and large organizations really deliver software with confidence. So let's switch gears and talk about application delivery. As Sanjay mentioned, infrastructure is cool and all, but we all understand that it's a means to an end, delivering applications, whether they be prepackaged applications or applications that support the business, custom apps. And the practice of modeling your infrastructure as code has really brought those 2 worlds of app delivery and infrastructure closer together. Right? We use the same tools, Git and CI and CD, to store and version and build and test and deploy infrastructure code as well as application code. But it's also true that in the node-centric world, these teams are still fairly separate and certainly deliver on separate schedules. Now, as Sanjay said, the cloud-native transformation really brings that convergence one step closer. In a cloud-native architecture, everything sits behind an API. So that really gives us a lot more opportunity to automate everything in the path of application delivery. And even the artifacts are converging. You think about Docker images. Is that an application artifact or an infrastructure artifact? It's kind of hard to answer that question because it's both. So all this convergence in the tools and the artifacts and the practices are also causing a transformation in what these teams do, right? If you think about it, infrastructure teams are now being asked to stand up and operate shared clusters, shared Kubernetes clusters on behalf of many application teams. And application delivery teams are in turn being asked to not just build, but also operate the applications that they're building. As Werner Vogels likes to say, you build it, you run it, right? So all these transformations are helping us deliver better software faster. But they also require us to evolve the tools for this new world. So that brings us to the third challenge of really kind of coping with that transformation to a cloud-native world. Last year, again, back at the previous PuppetConf, we announced Puppet Pipelines for Containers, which was our tool for automating the build, test, deploy cycle for containerized applications. It's available both as a SaaS. You can register for a free account anytime, even now at pipelines.puppet.com. You should try it out. Also available as an on-premises service. That one's not free. And we've evolved it quite a bit since we introduced it back last year. I'm really proud to announce version 3.3 of Puppet Pipelines for Containers. PFC 3.3, as we call it, now supports Helm charts. And with Helm quickly becoming the de facto package manager for Kubernetes, it's only appropriate that we also automate the build and deploy cycle for Helm charts the same way we do the build and deploy cycle for container images. So I've also talked about how we take more aggressive use of container technology to build our own software. And there is no more important SaaS application at Puppet than the Puppet Forge. I'd like to bring Jesse Scott, who's the lead engineer for the Forge team, to show you how we've taken advantage of pipelines for containers, Helm charts, and Kubernetes to really speed up the development of the Forge. Come on up, Jesse. Where are you? There you are.
Thanks, Omri. I'd like to share with you this morning a little bit about the Forge team's journey from a node-centric application delivery model to a cloud-native container delivery model. With the node-centric delivery model, we work primarily with 3 static environments. These are your standard development, staging, production. And despite extensive automation of this architecture, there were still some manual steps involved in deploying a new version of that environment, and that created friction. So the reality is new environments just didn't really get deployed very often. Instead, the team would share the static environments as needed. And then when we went and did integration testing, that was happening in an environment that didn't actually look that much like production. And this approach may be scalable or tenable for a small team, but it's not scalable. So earlier this year, we started on a journey towards a truly cloud-native, container-based delivery model for the Forge to really transform the way that we develop, test, and deploy the Forge. It's been a great learning experience for the whole team. Along the way, we've been modifying a lot of the facets of the application, from how we configure it to how we monitor it, and of course, how we deploy it. And that's where Helm fits in. With Helm, you can define all of the Kubernetes resources that make up your application, things like services, ingresses, deployments, secrets. And then you can package all that up into a single deployable artifact called a chart. Helm then deploys those charts into your Kubernetes infrastructure, and it works with Kubernetes to manage seamless upgrades when you have a new version of the application you'd like to deploy. Now, as Omri mentioned, Puppet Pipelines for Containers recently added support for deploying Helm charts as part of your pipeline. And today I'd like to show you how we've used that technology to greatly improve the way the team is evaluating and reviewing pull requests. So if we look on the screen, there we go. We see we have a new pull request here that one of my teammates has opened recently. Let's take a look at that. Let's look at the diff here. Scroll down. So in GitHub, I can see the code changes. And I know HTML, so I can tell that this is an update to the homepage content. It looks like we're announcing something called Puppet Enterprise 2019.0. That sounds pretty important.
I think it is, Jesse.
Yeah.
It is pretty important.
So I can see the code here. It looks pretty good. But I'd really like, this is a web page, I'd really like to see it in context. I'd really like to see it in my browser. So with our old node-centric model, there were a couple challenges to this. The best way to look at this really was I would pull the code down to my local machine, I would launch it in my local version of the Forge, look at it in a browser there. And that took a bunch of time and manual effort on my part. And the big thing is that if I was already working on something, suddenly I'm stashing my changes and I'm interrupting my flow. The other challenge was that it was really difficult to share these changes with non-technical members of the team with our tech pubs or marketing or UX teams because they didn't have a development environment of the Forge on their local machines, so it was really hard for them to look at the change. And with pipelines, we've actually been able to address both of these challenges. And while we've been talking about this, Pipelines has actually been working in the background to deploy this change into our development Kubernetes cluster. So let's take a look at the pipeline and see how it's doing. Scroll down here. So we can see our pipeline here. We can see at the top that Puppet Pipelines has kicked off a new build of our container image. We can see the commit that triggered that build. There's a link to the build log if something goes wrong and we need to investigate. But I'm pretty sure it's going to work. There we go. We got a green thing. We can see also up here that Pipelines has now pushed that image into our Puppet container registry. And that push event is actually what has triggered Pipelines to start a new Helm chart deployment into our cluster. And we can see that down at the bottom here. We can see the version of our Helm chart that is involved in this deploy, as well as the version of our container image that is mapped into that deployment. And then there's a little link here to the actual deployment. We can check that out. And there we see that Helm has deployed all of our resources. We see our service, our deployment, our ingress, and our pod. And there's a little link here we can grab and bring that up in a new tab. And there we go. We have a brand new pull request specific deployment of the Puppet Forge. We can see our new homepage content over here. We can see that in a fully realistic context. And now we can take this and we can share it with the other stakeholders for this change. What was the last thing I was going to say? Oh, yes. This has been a great opportunity for our team to also work with the Pipelines for Containers team to improve that product, and you're going to be seeing those changes in future releases. We're still in the midst of this journey, so we're hoping to have the production Forge fully migrated to Kubernetes by the end of the year. And that's it. Thank you very much, Omri.
Thank you, Jesse. It's really great to hear the journey that our most important SaaS app has taken towards adopting container technology, and how much faster they're actually going. Real results in action here. So that brings us to the final challenge, which is you can't improve what you don't measure, right? This is what Sanjay was talking about. My favorite Sanjayism, actually. And here, we all feel like shifting left and smaller batches of work and deploying the results of every sprint and employing automation throughout. We feel like it helps us deliver better software faster. But a lot of us struggle with measuring the results of that transformation. How much faster are we going? How many more releases are we doing? Are we really increasing the quality of our releases over time? And today, that's really hard to measure because all the data is strewn across a lot of different tools. You have some of it in source control systems, some of it in your CI systems, some of it in your continuous delivery systems, and it's very difficult to bring that all together. So, in order to solve that problem, we are delighted to announce a brand new product from Puppet, Puppet Insights. Puppet Insights is a product that speaks for itself. So rather than sit here and describe everything it does, I'd like to bring up Alex Bilmes, who was the co-founder and CEO of Reflect, the one that we just acquired, and now is the head of the Insights team at Puppet to come and give you a demo. Come on up, Alex.
Thank you, Omri. You can't improve what you don't measure. You've heard both Omri and Sanjay say this today. This is a fact, and it can't be disputed. But if you're an IT or engineering leader, it's really hard to measure how fast you're moving, the quality of the software that you're delivering to your customers, and the impact of the investments that you've made in DevOps. Now, it's really hard to do this because you have to pull a needle and a thread through all the different teams, tools, and processes within your organization. There's no way to connect the dots. Puppet Insights solves this exact problem. And the best part is, we do this with data that you already have. We connect to all the tools that you're already using across your organization. tools like GitHub, Puppet Pipelines, Travis CI, and others. And we don't just put charts on top of the data. That would be too easy. We like hard problems here at Puppet. We do all the fun stuff. We normalize the data, then we correlate it across the different sources, we enrich it, but that's not all. Remember the State of DevOps report? Well, that's the most complete body of knowledge on DevOps best practices ever. We use that data set to drive actionable recommendations so that you can do the same things that the best performing companies are doing. We also provide you with benchmarks so that you can see how you're doing against other companies in your industry. Now, when all that's done, then we give you dashboards and reports so that you can measure your progress and communicate what's happening to stakeholders. And speaking of stakeholders, we have a CEO that used to be a CIO. Sanjay has been very excited about this. Just about every time I turn around, he's standing behind me, asking when insights will be ready. So without further ado, I am very excited to give you the first ever public demo of Puppet Insights. This is, as you can see, a very beautiful dashboard, and we're looking at 3 core software delivery dimensions. Those are velocity, quality, and impact. Velocity measures the speed and frequency with which we deliver software. Quality looks at the end result of the quality that we've delivered to our customers. And impact measures a change in process and how that correlates to business value. So as an example, if our velocity score were to increase by, say, 10 points, what does that do to things like cost, revenue, customer NPS, things like that? Now, we're still in development on impact, so version 1 is squarely focused on increasing velocity without sacrificing quality. One other important thing to note about these scores, we're benchmarking ourselves against other companies in our industry, so these are relative scores. Now, let's take a look at the velocity of pipelines, which is the team that you saw earlier in the Forge demo. Now, if I scroll down here, we can see how we define velocity. And we're defining it by 2 metrics. Now, one important thing to note, these are not metrics that we came up with. These are metrics that the highest performing companies use to measure success. And these metrics are deployment lead time and deployment frequency. Deployment lead time looks at the amount of time that transpires between when your code is ready to be deployed into production to when it's actually running in production. And deployment frequency looks at the number of times that we deploy within any given time period. We can see here that our deployment lead time has increased significantly, which is not great. So let's take a look at some of these suggestions. Now, what you're looking at is our best practices panel. These are recommendations that we drive from data in the State of DevOps report. These are simple but powerful. As we continue to improve this, we will be customizing this with specific recommendations that we pull from the usage data of our beta customers, so we can get a lot more tailored with the use cases and environments. But as we can see here, the most impactful change that we can make is to containerize our builds. Well, let's remember this for a little bit later. If we scroll down here, we can see our software delivery pipeline. This is looking at our entire organization across all of our tools so we can get a single unified view. And we can also see that our average build time here has increased, which makes a ton of sense because average build time is directly correlated to deployment lead time. Now, to really see what's going on, we're going to have to slice things by team. So let's go and dig into that. In this top visualization here, we can see average deployment lead time broken up by team. And we can see that there's been an increase here on the container engineering team. This is the team that built pipelines for containers, which you saw earlier once again. And if we come down here, we can see potential bottlenecks and areas for improvement. And one thing that's immediately obvious is our average build time has increased significantly and steadily since July. Now, we went and talked to the pipelines team as we were building out this demo. We noticed this. And when we talked to them, we realized that their build time was increasing because their setup time had increased due to the introduction of new services. They are now working on containerizing all their builds. and we're very excited to see what the result of that effort will look like. In the meantime, Omri will be refreshing this page every few minutes, I'm sure.
Oh, you bet I will.
Now, this is just a very tiny slice of insights and also of the work that we're doing to increase our velocity. We will be doing a deep dive directly following the keynote, so please come check us out, and look forward to showing you more. Thank you very much. Thanks, Omri.
Thank you, Alex. Fantastic work.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it. As you could see, dog fooding our own software to actually go improve our own software delivery ability. And, useful product, but also, you'll agree with me, a beautiful product. So I hope you're just as excited as we are around all these new products and new releases. We've designed these releases to help you accelerate your time to value, scale your success, help you transform to a containerized and cloud-native world, and measure the results of that transformation. With Puppet Discovery, Bolt, Puppet Enterprise, CD for PE, Puppet Pipelines, and now Puppet Insights, we've built a portfolio of products that's focused on helping you with these challenges. And I'd really like to deeply thank the team that brought it all together for you here, the Puppet Products team. You've done an incredible job at deliver against that ambitious roadmap that we laid out for you last year. And lastly, I'd like to close with a deep thank you to you, our community. Without you, none of this would matter. We're humbled that you're here with us on this journey towards automating both infrastructure and application delivery across both your node-centric and your cloud-native environments. So thank you, and have a great Puppetize Live.